All right.
I like kicking it off with optimism.
Yeah. But it's what we're all doing here, right?
Yeah.
Let's send this bad boy out. Yeah, in case any of you guys needed to know, you have to have a master's in computer engineering to launch a podcast on Apple Podcasts. Thankfully, Mike the Stocks is going to help me when I tell you. Yeah, like, whew. Oh, man.
Wait, so I'm confused. What did they make you do? Like, why was it so tricky? I missed some of the details.
Dude, at one point yesterday, it was asking me for a W-9. Like a tax form. And I'm like, something is not right here. Like I'm down the wrong path and I don't know how to get off of it. So I DM'd Mike Flip the Stocks. I was like, hey man, you know I'm retarded. I need some help. I was like, I can't do this. And I DM'd Southern Fried Chat. I'm like, dude, did you try to put this on Apple Podcasts? He just writes back, no. I was like, wise man.
Yeah. Save yourself.
Choice. It's crazy though. So the channel's set up, all 4 episodes are set up, but for the life of me, I cannot figure out how to get the audio on the episodes. Like I even paid $20 like a yearly subscription to be an Apple Podcast creator, whatever that means. Then they needed a legal entity. Next thing you know, like I said, they're asking for a W-9. I'm like, what is happening right now? So yeah, we'll have that ironed away this weekend. Mike just got home. I guess his stream's tomorrow. The professor comes back tomorrow evening.
It's awesome. So cool how many like Twitter spaces are going on these days. Like
I know.
We used to just pretty much have the one run on Sundays by Nicole, but now there's like tons of different community members running spaces like almost every day of the week, and they're getting a good amount of traction too. So it's good to see.
I've been super busy the last week or so, and like yesterday having a long drive, I was like, I have so much. I can listen to Country Bitcoin's most Spiritual Gold's interview. I can listen to the 2 spaces from this week. Like there's like a few pawn talks I have to catch up on. I'm like, dude, this is. You could have an analyst.
I think.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Look into I think his name's Mr. DeJuice.
Yeah,
he's been doing spaces like 3 times a week. Highly recommend.
Yeah, his is awesome. I was gonna shout him out too. Zeb's was great. I don't know if you guys caught Zeb's. It was cool because it was a bunch of OGs up there, which is awesome because tomorrow Cal and I's Crypto Compass is a bunch of SPX OGs, so it was a good little entry into ours. I'm super pumped for that.
Yeah, looking forward to that one.
3 times a week is no joke either. It's a lot.
For real, man. That's a lot of work. No, it's really cool. I think it's just going to keep getting bigger, honestly.
For sure.
And you guys buy Yeezy Coin?
This is like during what's that?
Did you buy Yeezy Coin last night? Anybody?
I just woke up and I saw that. I mean, luckily I was asleep when that happened. But it's so funny because you fall asleep and the entire thing's already dumped off like by the time.
So you missed the entire event. It's true.
Literally a good 8-hour night of sleep and it's over. Yeah.
When Trump launched, it at least was like, whoa, this actually is, kind of like a bridging into the real world that we haven't really seen before. But it's like at this point, it's like you see that, and at least for me, it's like, okay, I know who to like mute if anyone's talking about this seriously. Like, who gives a shit, It's just
I want to know who's buying that at this point after the 40th celebrity coin launches. Who's buying that? I
mean, the majority of Twitter participants are just rotating between coins nonstop. So I could see it, but I mean, for those of us who have, who have longer than like 45-second time horizons, it's just more noise.
I mean, Trump was like another example of like why I don't want to play this game. I was in Disney World with my family, and I'm like, just watching the liquidity get sucked out of everything. I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm done with this game.
It's crazy. It's crazy too because it not only does it make you realize how kind of mercenary some participants are, but it also makes you realize like why most people don't want to play this game at all, and why there's still a pretty large gap between retail and like quote unquote crypto native, CT, whatever you want to call them, because it's just like there's so many. I saw so many posts, and I heard a lot of people in real life who were just like fantasizing about, I saw it at this, but I went to bed and then I woke up and I have so much regret or remorse. And it's like, why like beat yourself up over some theoretical fantasy that you were gonna like buy this, sell the top? It's just like, it's a weird gambler's fantasy. And it's like, it's even to me, it's really alien. Like, I'm just like, wow, dude, like you could do this in perpetuity with every coin forever. Like, what's the point?
I swear the single phrase that'll save you the most money in the meme coin space and probably the broader crypto space as a whole is, if it's not a slow cook, it's a scam.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. That and stop trading and believe in something.
True.
Yeah. Yeah. Just make sure it's the right thing to believe in.
Yeah.
Do we want to wait a few more minutes, Tans, or should
We'll wait a few minutes.
Okay. Yeah, no, those will do you good. That's honestly, that's why I found a lot of solace in like when I originally discovered Murad amongst like the sea of kind of just random meme coin KOLs last year. So I was like, this guy at least like if this is a sword I fall on, it's at least like a good sword. You know what I mean? it's
for
not
sure.
Like, it's not like the hat on the sphere.
My timeline's so curated that I didn't even get to see who was really pushing it, right? But if I had to guess, it was the same people, right? It's the same actors. I do find it, what a coincidence that Hayden dude gets his money unfrozen the day before, and then this Kanye coin releases the day after. I found that to be, what's the chances, Just a coincidence? Maybe not. Makes sense.
Fellas, TBH, we're trying to max extract on this one.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
So crazy.
No, it's just crime. But you're right.
Also, it's also like Grimace was saying, not to hate, but like, how are you letting guys like this take from you over and over and over again? It's always the same like builds,
Call it financial masochism. That's what I call it.
Yeah, I like that.
That's what it is, dude. They get some type of pleasure out of this. And it ties right into our topic today, because those are the people that buy that at, they see it at $1, $2, $3 billion. They buy it. They wake up, it's at $1 billion, and they go, you see, this whole thing's a scam. And it's like, is it? Is it all a scam, or did you just fall for the same scam again? Like it's that doomerism mindset, I think, plays into a lot of these trades, because it pushes to the fact that like, I got to get, this whole thing's a scam, but this one's not going to be. I'm going to get in, get out. Like that's how I escape this matrix. Well, the truth is, if that was if that was going to work, it would have worked on the 30 other celebrity coins that all went to zero. So I think it kind of ties in perfect to our topic. Oh wait, we do have to point out that SPX is on the Coinbase roadmap. Just saying. Couldn't tell you how many DMs I got on that, like leading up to that. It's going, if SPS wasn't a scam, it would have been listed on Coinbase already.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right? Brad sold all of his coins.
There was a conversation about that like 10 hours before it got listed yesterday. They're like, I think that's why like Coinbase, and they said of all places that Coinbase and Binance won't list SPX is because like they're concerned about supply control. I'm like, dude, that's like exclusively what they list.
I don't think I don't think people are even appreciating the magnitude of how important this is as well, because this is an access route. This is a new on-ramp, and Coinbase has tens of millions, if not over north of 100 million verified users who perhaps couldn't access this asset before. I have a bunch of friends that are like, well, how do I do this? Or I'm based in New York, and the exchanges that SPX is listed on, I can't get exposure. So there's a lot of pent up demand for this asset, and now that there's this new access point, I think it's a really, really positive thing for like free markets and decentralized permissionless network. Like now they're supporting it, and now people can make their choice, and that's really important. And then the other important element of this is there's like an institutional de-risking effect that happens when Coinbase supports something, and people will go from saying, well, why isn't this on Coinbase yet? What's going on here? To, wow, if Coinbase is doing something, we should do something as well. And there's a game theoretical domino effect of these types of actions. So I think it's fantastic that they did that. I think it gives me, speaking of hope, it gives me hope that Coinbase as an organization still has alignment with the core ethos on which their business was built in the first place, which is open permissionless networks and cryptocurrencies. They got their start on Bitcoin. And it's important for them to continue to support assets like this and give people the choice to express their views on different vehicles, regardless of what the rhetoric is out there. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I think anybody that's tried to onboard people into SPX has dealt with the question like, can I buy this on Coinbase? And it's always a disappointment telling them like, no, but you can buy some USDC and go transfer it over to this other wallet. But first you have to make the wallet and save this seed phrase. And yeah, just less layers of sophistication, making it easy for people and having that brand name reliability. So it's just it's an ease of access thing.
I'm curious to see when Robinhood does. To me, Robinhood really is that's the one. Coinbase is huge. Don't get me wrong, especially when you're talking about crypto. But for me, just because I lived it, I saw it when I was in the union with Dogecoin. Robinhood's user interface is so good that it really, that's where retail goes. Retail loves to go to Robinhood. I probably got asked just as many times about is SPX listed on Robinhood than I did on Coinbase. And I really think it comes down to user interface. They pretty much prove that if you could really make a clean, easy to navigate user interface, retail is going to buy it. And the other reason why I like Robinhood is retail buys stocks on there, right? And most retail is not trading stocks. They're investing in stocks, right? So they buy and hold. And I think that helps, just the mindset, like I'm going to buy this and hold it like a stock. And I think that's important. And in my experience of onboarding retail, that's how they hold this crypto. The only way that they don't is if they come here thinking that they're going to play the game and make $1 million overnight. So it really is just how you onboard them. But as long as you explain, like, you're going to hold this like a stock, they hold it like a stock. That's just what they do. So I think Robinhood, I'm really curious to see what Robinhood does moving forward. They've been pretty quiet in the sense of meme coins, right? They really haven't done much. So I wonder if this is, Coinbase made the first move. Now they'll get going.
Yeah, I mean, they listed Popcat. I don't see why they won't list a coin like SPX.
While we have the platform, and since we have a bunch of viewers, I believe Robinhood is doing an AMA today on Reddit, and so if people want to go and make their case during that AMA, might be worthwhile.
Yeah, guys, we can stop rating Coinbase now. We can move over to Robinhood Finance.
Let's Focus is your friend. Yeah, one more thing on the Coinbase stuff. Like, Robinhood, I totally agree, is like kind of I think it's the king for retail money, just because they honestly came to evangelize stocks to retail at the right time, when they kind of really accelerated into up-only technology. And the UI is great. I think Vlad's really smart. Like the 401k move was really smart. Like, they're clearly trying to become the modern single interface for money. And so I think they'll be big. But Coinbase, Coinbase's edge really is in twofold. One, like they were really the only like US based crypto exchange that was big that did not suffer credibility kind of like waves after the FTX crash. And that's a big deal. And secondly, there's a lot of institutional money. There's a lot of kind of prime brokerage services that exist for high net worth individuals and whatnot on Coinbase that, really just there's no option for outside of, at least to my knowledge, unless you want to work individually with a market maker for fills or something like that. So that's a really big deal. That's not to be understated. The like liquidity gating for people who would rather work with like a partner of some kind than go on chain and do it and just, buy the liquidity pool. So really big deal.
And ideally we want people to self-custody their coins. But, there's an education process there. Like, there's liabilities that come with self-custodying, and it's hard to teach someone new, like, make sure that you don't click any of these links and whatnot. And I think Coinbase is the one exchange that, if you like need to hold coins somewhere aside from self-custody, I think it's safe to do it there. So that's nice.
Yeah, that's a good point.
As opposed to most other exchanges, which I wouldn't recommend holding coins there in general. So
I totally agree. A lot of people don't like to, like they like kind of even though we all know it's a false sense of security, like it feels more secure to them than trying to figure out how to have a cold storage wallet. And it's when it's real money. I mean, people get freaked out. You were saying this the other day, Mark.
Oh, cool. I think like there's a couple things I would suggest here, just having done this for a very long time. Cold storage is obviously optimal. Diversifying across wallets is a way to limit the tail risk of losing everything. If you're going to hold coins on exchanges or places like this, make sure you turn on two-factor authentication on everything. Don't use the text message version. Use something like Google Authenticator. So like just take some time and beef up your security. Like, this is like the one thing. It's like you should definitely spend time on making sure you have the right secure setup on storing your coins.
Yeah, it takes literally minutes to add these extra security features that, will save you tons of money and, tons of, time, because, if you're showing up and like you're bull posting your bags every day only to get hacked, then you just wasted all that time and you could have just spent a few minutes on security.
Yeah, a lot of times it's as easy as just that two-way authentication. My mother-in-law just got hacked through Facebook. They got to all her credit card, debit card, all through Facebook, and all she needed was that 2FA and it would have stopped it. Like that simple. It stinks. Like she'll probably get a bunch of that money back, but it's like you said, the time, and then you got to cancel everything. You got to be on the phone for hours.
Yeah. It's like there's paranoia in it too. It's obviously like it can't be compared to like a physical, I guess, violation of privacy in the same way, but there is, you start to become skeptical of like every link that's sent to you and, all kind of anything that you're clicking on. It's demoralizing, I guess. So yeah, definitely take the time to learn the ropes.
Yeah, I recommend just not clicking any links at all, no matter who
I'm the same way. If any calendar invite, anything that I get at any time now, my first suspicion is like, I'm not going to touch this.
And if you are going to click links, then just have another device to do that on where, none of your wallets are linked there.
All right, Kai, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, let's do it. So theme of the day is obviously Doomerism and, kind of how that has plagued the mindset of a lot of kind of younger people who feel they've been left behind, and how SPX fixes this, I guess. But ultimately, like how, SPX acts as a vehicle of hope for a lot of people, which I think is is one of the most important core value props of the token itself. So I wanted to kick things off because I have pretty stark opinions on this stuff. I think even just to start with, SPX aside, it's hard to look at the objective kind of state of the world and not at least sympathize with the people who are frustrated. I've been like a perpetual optimist my whole life. It's something I've always prided myself on. My mother's the same way. It runs in half our family, put it that way. And the other half is quite cynical. And so, I always felt that there was like a negative magnetism to the cynical side and a positive magnetism to the other side. And ever since I was a little kid, I kind of always, tried to take the optimistic view of every situation. And the other like flip side of that coin is like naivete, right? Which has certainly been me at times. But all in all, like I've found that to be a really powerful lens for life, is trying to, find the good in things, the good in experiences, the good in people. It's served me really well. It's helped me kind of, remain really happy and led me to a lot of like blessings, opportunities, all that stuff. So I firmly believe in that being, a very positive view of the world. With that being said, like there's, an infinite amount of trends, both social, financial, cultural, that we could pull up that, show that, a lot of this like positivity and optimism is not felt in the broader, especially like Gen Z and millennial landscape, but just kind of broader humanity at the moment. And, I have to even admit, as, an optimistic permabull on life, that there's some validity to that, right? And I can understand why people feel a sense of angst and uncertainty and frustration and hopelessness at the moment. And so I think it's a really interesting time to have this conversation. Personally, myself, I think that a lot of doomerism just kind of resides in fear. I think that historically, we've had fight and we've had flight as two like response mechanisms to situations where things could go wrong and put you in danger. And we now have this concept of like, wealth inequality, and job displacement that has kind of created like a perpetual state of, fight or flight response validity. And I think what it's created is like this concept of fright, or like a third F, where people feel that maybe the best thing to do, instead of either A, burying my head in the sand, or B, trying to find like a route out or something to protest with, is to, essentially just sad emoji through the whole thing. If I give up ahead of time, then maybe it won't affect me, right? Maybe I can front run sentiment so hard that I'll be safe psychologically. And, I think that concept has been proven to be a very poor approach to any circumstance that life throws at you. Obviously, like there is a world where, everything does continue to erode, and, AI and robotics does take all our jobs and everybody's on the street. I don't think that's going to happen, because I don't think that will be allowed to happen. Regardless, that is a real possibility. I think the fetishization of that possibility, not only has no influence on the outcome of it happening, but also does a lot more harm than good in the interim, and blocks you from feeling like you have any locus of control in the situation or in reacting to the situation. And so I personally believe, to wrap up this monologue, that failure is at the crux, and fear is at the crux of a lot of human decisions. It's a lot stronger than the idea of success to people. The idea that, everything is going to go wrong, I can't do anything about it, and I should wave my white flag and give up. And that's just never been an effective strategy in life. And social dynamics do not favor that. And so I would I would, I know that no, aeons or eons need to hear this, but, I would encourage you to challenge that idea and try to think about what you can do to mobilize yourself and try to influence, the right outcomes occurring. And I think you'll find that the power of the cognosphere and in general, the power of optimism and action is much stronger and actually bleeds into all other areas of your life. They help you get into better shape. It helps you have a more optimistic view of other people. There's a purification process that comes with that I think is really powerful. And so, it's a big reason I'm so attracted to SPX, because it's a social safe haven, I think, where everybody feels that in varying capacities. So I'll shut up for a little bit, but that's what I think.
Yeah, I think Doomerism is largely a manifestation of risk aversion and unwillingness to adapt. You were talking about a fear response, and one of those fear responses is just freezing and not taking action. If you do hold like kind of a doomeristic perspective, then there's still opportunities that you can explore. And yeah, like one book that I recommend is Snowball, I think is the name of it. And it's a biography on Warren Buffett. And like, people have been doomers, since the beginning of time. They've been calling for the collapse and whatnot. And the reason I recommend that book is because Buffett's dad was a really smart guy. And, after we left the gold standard, he was basically continually calling for the collapse of everything. And meanwhile, Buffett was kind of looking at his dad and he was thinking logically and, more optimistically. And that's what enabled him to perform so well. Another thing I'd add is a statistic that I looked up is how many years since 1900 has the market been up versus down, and it's really SPX 6900 coded because it's 69% of years been up and versus down. And I mean, even if you're in those down years, like as we look at the S&P 500 right now, it's it's breaking all-time highs. So even if you're holding during those down years, if you would have just continued to be optimistic on the market, you would have left out a winner. Yeah, that's what I'll say for now.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, one of the things that I've always just been like fascinated with and passionate about is to try to understand the state of the world. And so that's kind of what drove me earlier in my career to working at Bridgewater. That's also what drew me to Bitcoin. And I think that's part of what's drawing me to SPX right now. And I think in terms of understanding the state of the world and then trying to figure out like, what do you do about it? Like, where do you invest and why? Doomerism can actually be a good first step, because if Doomerism is on the rise, that could actually reflect a realistic mapping of the state of the world. And so from that perspective, I think Doomerism can be like a hyper pragmatic first step, because it could be the most accurate assessment of a reality. But like, I don't think that's the end of the road. I don't think we should stop there. I think we need to use that as something that is indicative of a problem that we need to solve. Otherwise, what's the point? So Doomerism comes from a large scale or consensus view that people are basically being fed too much shit that they don't want. So when Doomerism is on the rise, like, this is a signal to understand what the root cause of the problem is. And then you need to tie that, you need to say, okay, this is a problem. People are being fed too much shit that they don't want. And then you tie that back to what people's goals actually are. Like, well, what do they want? What do humans want to get that they're not getting right now, which is leading them down this path of Doomerism? And when I look at a lot of the metrics that Murad puts out in his thesis, and and his presentation, I see a lot of the same trends and just dot connecting across the world, whether it's in the crypto Twitter sphere or other areas that I'm looking at. Like I see a pattern emerging and doomerism on the rise. And so what do people want? People want a peaceful life. They want to love their family and friends. They want to have a semblance of financial security. They don't want to constantly live in survival mode. They want leisure time. They don't want to slave their lives away without pursuing their passions. Essentially, they want a very simple American dream that previous generations had, that people either are not able to achieve in the current context, or there's a perception that they won't be able to achieve that in the future. Whether that's right or wrong almost doesn't matter, because that is the perception. And so how can we provide what these people want? I look at companies in Silicon Valley, governments around the world, all these sort of, let's call them like traditional actors, taking conventional methods to try to solve this problem. And I see the trends continuing. I'm actually coming to the conclusion that like conventional methods are not the answer to this problem, because if conventional methods were the answer to this problem, we wouldn't see the trend continuing to accelerate. And I truly believe that we have the answer. I believe the answer is cryptocurrency, not crypto assets, cryptocurrency. In the same way that Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency was the answer one generation ago in the aftermath of the financial crisis, it delivered a solution to these exact problems that I'm describing. So I believe the answer is cryptocurrency. And I think what we're building here is not a crypto. It's not a crypto asset that can do X, Y, Z. It's not what we're attempting to deliver is not some coin where it's like the goal is a 10X and get out. The goal is to build a next generation cryptocurrency and belief system around something that can help people escape these circumstances. I've seen this movie before. And then the only question for me is, do we have what it takes to do it again? Do we have the right people with the right mentality and what it takes to stand our ground and do it again? And it's like, I feel really strongly about this. Like a new generation needs a version of this. To do this, you need to evangelize the vision and build trust at scale. Like that's it. That's what the early Bitcoiners did. We need to keep doing that. We need to find people who are willing to fight for it and rebalance the world order towards the things that humans actually value and give them a path. So that's kind of my view on things.
How the hell am I supposed to follow that up? What am I supposed to say? No, I totally agree with that. So here's my problem with doomerism. I loathe it. I find no value in it. I think that I get what you're saying, where like doomerism is a good way to gauge society. So I wasn't looking at it like from that aspect. I was just looking at it from my life experience, right? So when I was on TradFi, it was interesting. It was 2011, 12, 13, 14, right? So market was ripping. There really wasn't much doomerism when I was there. Even though I was on the bond side where the market was dead, there still really wasn't, I didn't really see too much of it. My boss was a perma-bull, always optimistic. And I kind of just realized that every guy I ran into in TradFi that was successful felt the same way. You know, they never looked at anything as the bad side. It was always, well, this is what we're going to do moving forward. You know, like this is what we capitalize right now. And then I really saw it when I got into dock building, because with dock building, you're physically doing things and things go wrong all the time. And the best leaders, the best foremen, the best supers, when something went wrong, they didn't just go home. They looked at the problem, they addressed it, and we just kept moving forward. And I feel like that is the human spirit, you know, and that's the biggest problem I have with doomerism is doomerism paralyzes action, right? You talked about fright. I think that's a great one. fight, flight, and fright. That is what Doomerism is. It's this fright stage where you're frozen. It paralyzes action. And the problem with that is, unless you're a little child and someone's going to come and help you like your parents, that does nothing. That does not benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit yourself. It doesn't benefit the situation that you're in. So that's why Doomerism always makes me angry, because it's like it freezes everything. It stops you from making any actions. And the other thing is it erodes your mental health. If you are sitting there and you are permanently pessimistic on the world and everything around you, you yourself are going to become a miserable person, which in turn is going to make everyone around you miserable. And I'm sure you guys can attest to this. When you're in a group setting, right? If you're at work and you're on a team and that one guy is just always like, it's over. No one wants to be around that guy. And that guy usually doesn't produce anything near the people that are like, yeah, we're going to make this work. And I just feel like
it quite literally does not connect to what people's goals are.
Yeah.
Like what is your goal? Is your goal your goal in life is probably to be happy, right? That's just not a path that's going to lead you to what your goals are. So they're like not, I don't even think people who are stuck in this mind frame are connecting to the fact that like this is a way of thinking that is incompatible with what I want to get out of life.
And you're never going to problem solve like that. That's my other thing that I really learned with dock building is when everything's over, your mind is you're so shut off. You will never actually, it distorts problem solving to the maximal degree. And the truth is, like Cal said, things are wrong right now. For sure. And this is coming from a guy that thinks that I think there is no good actors in politics. I don't think many of these governments care about us. Like, I'm not saying I'm sitting here thinking that we're going to get saved. I don't. They're not coming to save us. But the last thing that I'm going to do is stick my head in the sand, because that's going to get nothing done.
Yeah. I actually don't think a lot of these people in power, whether it's Silicon Valley or the government or what have you, I think a lot of them are not necessarily malicious people. I think the problems we're dealing with are super complex, and they require a different lens of thinking. They require outside the box thinking. I think some people in Silicon Valley have that capacity. I think less people in the government complex have that capacity. But we really need to think about unconventional methods to solving these types of problems if we actually want to solve them.
I totally agree. And I think that Silicon Valley especially has kind of fallen victim with the success of it obviously, it used to be quite an anarchist ideal. Like a lot of, software companies, a lot of tech companies in general, it was pretty synonymous with counterculture, similar to how Bitcoin was in its early days. I think similar to where SPX is now. And I guess the broader quote unquote category of pure belief assets, and I think that's to me, that's really attractive. I like being, in a small group of warriors against the world kind of feeling. I think there's a lot of belief and inspiration that comes from that. But I think that this is also an incentive issue, Matt, to your point, these people don't really, it's in their best interest to kind of, bury their heads in the sand and try to ignore these things. And, you can see, I forget exactly who it was, but someone reposted, I think a TikTok of a guy with a beard yesterday who's in his truck. And I've seen a lot of these over the last year or two, who kind of went on a little soliloquy about how hard life is now and how life's not, supposed to be this hard and this kind of meaningless. And, I totally agree with him. And I think you're seeing this rhetoric really accelerate, and you're even starting to see it, kind of breach into CNBC and Bloomberg. And, I was watching a Y Combinator panel. I forget the exact title of it, but I was watching the most recent Y Combinator panel. And entrepreneurs are getting younger. They're 19, 20 years old now, raising massive rounds. And generally people are afraid that are in college, I'm not going to have a job when I get out. And there's validity to that fear. But I think like one of the things that I did in preparation for this, I'm not a big Stoic person because I'm like, I don't know, I've always liked like the concept of Buddhism a little bit more, but I respect like the ideology behind it. And I think it applies like really well to Doomerism as a whole, because ultimately it's just like an acknowledgement of locus of control, right? Like things are going to happen. There will be externalities that change constantly that you have zero control over. And to succumb to fear to all of those all the time at once is actually just a sign of weakness, that you're not able to kind of determine what you can influence and work on that.
Yeah, you control the output, not the outcome. And I could speak to that guy in that truck, right? Because that was me for a while, right? And then when I went and I found these meme coins and I started bringing them back to these union guys, that was one thing that I realized, right? Was these guys have no hope, right? They're stuck in this race, and in their defense, like that's the truth. Like you have a set salary. You know what your hourly is. You get like $1 raise a year, not even close to catching up to inflation. Like there is no bonuses. Very rarely is there a bonus. So you know just about what you're going to make based on the type of job that you're on, right? If you're working 40 hours a week, this is what your salary is going to be for the year. If you get lucky and you're working so they have a very good gauge, right? And then, so they also have a very good gauge of their retirement, right? So there is no, I'm going to catch this thing and make money. So they are stuck in this race. And what I found when I brought them these meme coins was it got them excited because it gave them hope. And I think hope is the first step to get someone out of that doomerism, right? Because hope just changes the way you look at everything. It changes the way you wake up in the morning, the way you go to work, the way you interact with people. And that's why I'm so bullish on SPX, because we are surrounded by a bunch of miserable, pessimistic people, in particular on CT. And when you could be that beacon of hope, there is something so contagious, so powerful, right? Just so polarizing about that. And that's what the world needs right now. Because I agree with everything that was said, AI, all of that. But the truth is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We need to win. That is the human spirit, right? Like if this was the end, then dude, the Black Plague would have killed humanity. The stock market crash in 1929 would have ended humanity. What's the saying? It's like your problem is your worst problem, right? Like that, like your worst day is your worst day. And that's just how I feel like. I don't know if it's because of the internet, because of social media, maybe it's in our face so much. We like people think like we've never overcome anything anymore. And so, it's like, I don't know. That part drives me nuts.
It's really interesting. I've been talking to this founder recently, totally unrelated to SPX, who has been working for like the last several decades of mapping people's thinking styles. So they're administering tests and grouping them into different thinking styles. And he can basically group people into past, present, and future thinking styles. And there's a lot of ways to apply that type of data. But they're quite constructive, and then there's ways to apply that data that is I think like antithetical to what we're all talking about here. But what's interesting to me about talking to him about these three different thinking styles, past, present, and future, is if doomerism only fits into present, it doesn't fit into past, and it doesn't fit into future. Because if you look back at the past, doomerism has always been overcome by the adaptive nature of humanity. So the past doesn't reinforce that doomerism is like the right approach or the right path. And then, if you're more of a future thinker, like I think a lot of the people in SPX are, and you're trying to create new avenues or new channels or new vessels and vehicles of hope that can help, divert or allow humans to adapt off this path as unconventional as they are, you don't really get stuck in the doomerism thing either. So it's like a point in time. It seems to me, when I look at it from that lens, it's like a really point in time thing, where you're just sitting in like a rocking chair going back and forth, but you're not going anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a great way. Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to put it. It doesn't help the past. It doesn't pertain to the future.
And I just want to add one thing to, like, I guess what both of you all just said. I do think it's extra prominent right now because the tailwind of like network effects and these like real pressures are affecting people. I think that Murad putting that as hormonal is like very accurate. So I do think that's real. And obviously, like we all know that, you know, social media tries to manipulate you into these like kind of spiritually impoverished groups, which is a shame. So that is real, but also, you know, I guess as like a kind of a continuation of what you're both saying, like Doomerism has always existed. There's always been that guy you talked about in The Office, Monj, who's like, you know, I guess defeatist about everything. It's not a new mindset for humanity, but you can tell from the types of people joining SPX, there's obviously like, I guess, product market fit for like hope and belief and all of these things for people. Like people don't want to feel like it's over forever. And that's why human ingenuity exists. You know, like it's just a group of people coming together to try to change what they see as broken. That's not a new concept that will never, ever go away as long as, you know, people are people.
And that's one thing. Oh, sorry. Go Tans. Go Tans.
Adding on to Matt's perspective, I think it's okay if logic leads you to a more doomer perspective, but I think it's less important the conclusion that you come to, and it's more important how you react to that conclusion. So, you know, let's say you're a doomer. Conventionally, a lot of those guys are just going to go fully in cash. They're going to buy oil. They're going to buy gold. They're going to buy well, yeah, they're gonna buy guns for sure. Yeah. So at that point, it's like none of those assets are really gonna make any significant change in your life. Like maybe you'll be able to hold your wealth with gold as a store of value. But the other option is that you can kind of you can come to this conclusion, and then you can identify areas in the market where you think others are going to come to the same conclusion, and they're going to flock there as a result of that. And I think markets, I think capital and markets tends to flock to vehicles of optimism and vehicles of the future. And that's why, you know, you look at the best performing companies, and what'll likely be the best performing companies in the future is that they're a bet on the future. You know, you look at AI companies, you look at robotics. These are a bet on future optimism in a world where, you know, there's some dissatisfaction with their current state of affairs. So I think SPX is another example of this vehicle of optimism.
Yeah, I was going to just say the one thing that I think people get wrong about Murad's thesis, and maybe it's because they come from this like pessimistic mindset, is they interpret it as, you know, like the world's ending, buy my coin. You know what I'm saying? Like that is, it's like robots are, you're not having sex anymore, buy my coin. And it's like, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is these are the things that are happening in the real world. Here is a vehicle to escape that, to like as a community, as a whole. And I just feel like CT does not interpret that the right way. You know what I mean? Like he's not a doomer. He's not pessimistic. Maybe it comes off that way, but he's not. What he's saying is this is the answer to these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why I think what you said, completely agree, Manch, and Tans, what you said about like the logical orientation of what do you do if you're a doomer? You know, maybe you buy gold or you know, you find ways to sort of bet on that trend that you see taking place. But what history has taught us is like it doesn't end there, and people will always find some optimistic outlet or adaptive outlet as they have through the entire course of human history. And so you need to think about, okay, what are the second and third order consequences of this? And there will be several second and third order logical optimism focused vessels out of this. There will not only be one. There might be some that are better than others, but there will not only be one. And if you're a doomer, you can, you can bet on like the downfall of everything, but what you should really be doing is betting on the second and third order optimistic things that no one else is looking at yet. because a lot of people they're not thinking in that way of trace. One of the things I was always enamored with when I was working at Bridgewater with these really smart people is their ability to connect dots or look at logical sequences further out than other people were willing to go. So, most people will go like 2 or 3 hops, and then they'll either like start to get like mentally exhausted, or they'll just like get stuck. And what I noticed about a lot of the great thinkers that I worked with there is they could just keep going, and they could keep making logical connections in lots of different directions. And that's how people should be thinking. And I think a lot of people in SPX are thinking that way.
Matt, I'm curious, do you feel that in general, like the length of time out in a logical sequence has shortened amongst like the average person?
That's why I think it's an advantage if you're able to think.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Like that is a differentiator, because people, the world has right now, there's like so much information and data in the world that it's like overwhelming human brains. It's like too much to process. And even that, like the realization of that can help you formulate logical paths for how humans will behave. It's like, oh, okay, I realized that like the attention span on humans is shorter, and the ability of humans to process all this information in the world is like more limited relative to the data that's out there than ever. What does that mean? Like you can think about it through like a very logical, hyper objective problem solving type of framework.
Yeah, I also think there's like, to go back to your Murad point, Manj, like there's a difference between a doomer and like a pragmatist. And I think that I personally view Murad as like more of a pragmatist. Like he's obviously like there's some dreamerism in there, but also like he's looking at what the state of the world is very, very, very realistically and very logically. Like he's taking, and I remember, I think it was on the last Pond Talk, he mentioned that he's not a big fan of looking backwards and more of a big fan of trying to figure out what's going to happen based on what's currently occurring, which I generally like agree with. I think is a really smart philosophy, but being a pragmatist is more along the lines, from my POV, of looking at a current situation and understanding like this is what's happening, and I'm going to figure out like what the best path is here, but I'm not going to be intellectually dishonest with myself that this is what's happening. And a doomer is more from my POV of like a defeatist, and someone who looks at the current information and says there actually is no path here. Like it is going to go down and there's nothing that we can do about it. And so not only am I going to panic, I'm going to tell you to panic, because the more people around me that panic, the better I feel about submitting to the circumstance that I believe will fail.
I totally agree with that. Another thing I've been thinking about a lot lately when I talk to people, right? So the way I pitch SPX is GME Unchained, and it takes them about 30 seconds to understand what I mean. And one thing I've realized is that door, right? That GME door was never really closed, right? The way that it ended for retail was so sour and just like ruthless. And there hasn't been another way. You know what I mean? Like that door wasn't closed. There is still so much like anger built up towards these institutions, towards these big banks. And we could now channel that into something that is decentralized. Like that energy is still there. It hasn't been harnessed. Those people didn't get burned by Robinhood and just go buy Bitcoin. That wasn't that crowd. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't the same crowd. So I think that there is this enormous amount of untapped energy still in retail right now that just does not understand what SPX is yet. And I think that SPX is night and day better than GME based on the community, the structure, the organization, the quality of people, right? This self-filtering mechanism that we talk about, that I truly believe it could be way bigger than GME. Now, the most rebuttals that I get is like, well, GME people were only in there because of the short squeeze. Well, here's the truth. Most people missed the short squeeze. they were buying it from $300 down. You know what I mean? There's this notion that all of retail made money on GME, and I just don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's true. I think a lot of people, because of the way retail works, they were late to that. So they not only did they miss it, they lost money on it, and then the door wasn't closed, and I think that's the energy that SPX could tap into, and that is a TAM that I don't think crypto really understands yet. I don't think meme coins really understands that. If we could tap into that, it's on. They can't turn off the buy button. There's no dark pools. The market doesn't close at 4 p.m. Like this is GME Unchained.
Right. There's always going to be like global trends that are outside of your control, and so you can't really focus on the things that are outside of your control. You can kind of just like add that to your mental model, and then you control what you can locally, and that's how people that's how people like improve their lives in general. It's by finding out what they can do based on their current circumstance, instead of just resigning their agency.
I think too, like just to talk about and follow up on what you were saying, Manj, like SPX as a vehicle of hope for people. Like, it's I think the easy path out to say that there's no solution, there's no future, and that there's no kind of like, just to wave the white flag, I guess. And I think a lot of the power in SPX, and like you said, it was similar to GME, was similar to Occupy Wall Street way back in the day, it was similar to Bitcoin's origins. Like, there's product market fit in the underlying ethos of what this is saying, which is, and I think Murad put it really eloquently the other day I think it was a response to someone, but it's almost in the kind of financial protest of the traditional means of money, and of like a group of people that have largely been the main benefactors of like what they've marketed to a bigger group of people. And I would actually argue that, like you said, Manj, like GME actually reinforced the point. The dev printed more shares and dumped on retail again.
Yeah.
It probably made them even angrier. And the circumstances that caused that, you could argue it's short squeeze. It's obviously deeper than that. People fucking hate hedge funds, right?
Yeah.
And they hate the emblematic representation of wealth, and for good reason, right? And they've been taught that all like kind of things that were pushed under the rug that rich people do, are not a big deal, only to find out that actually like they all happened, and they actually were kind of more cynical or messed up than they originally anticipated. And so, I posted this a while back. I think this was like in March or April. I just like woke up one morning and I was like, like this has kind of been attempted a few times, but the vehicles weren't good. And I think it was like Occupy Wall Street, GME, Bitcoin, and then I included Dogecoin, which I don't really I think it's more of an expression of like financial nihilism or something that at the time than the other ones. But, the feeling of protest, coupled with the fact that there is a realistic world where SPX becomes a form of UBI for people, right? A way for them to outperform the market by DCAing at scale, like across the world, is something that the cynics that exist in like general crypto as participants genuinely cannot wrap their heads around.
Yeah, this is super ambitious, but from my perspective, this is the aspiration. The aspiration is there are a few assets that have crossed the chasm to become permanent hold assets within crypto. Like true cryptocurrencies are permanent hold assets because they're viewed by people, in this industry and like us as better than holding fiat. So Bitcoin is a permanent hold asset for me. Ethereum is a permanent hold asset for me. The aspiration here is from my perspective, is to build a true cryptocurrency that for a large group and well like diversified group of people becomes a true currency and a permanent hold asset. And once you get to the level of permanent hold asset, this is like really how you exit the system. This is how you, and if you have people operating at that level who are actually like, their intention is like, maybe they need to sell a little bit to, cover their mortgage. And obviously you got to pay your mortgage in cash and get your groceries and stuff. But the more people we can get trying to think at this level of ambition, the more likely we can achieve this type of outcome. And so I feel like a sense of responsibility of like what I want us to be able to do here is I want to build the next generation cryptocurrency, which no one is really, we like the term crypto asset. I really feel like it let us off course. Like we forgot about what the magic of true cryptocurrencies is, like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And we can do it again. We just have to be intentional about it. And we have to find the right group of people, and we have to be disciplined, and we have to be in it for the long haul and
persist.
Yeah. Honestly, like seriously.
No, it's true.
Yeah, one thing I was watching recently is one of Balaji's interviews. I'd recommend a lot of the stuff that he does. I can't remember what the title of it was. I think it was with Peter McCormick. But what he talks about is how the internet and the US are basically in competition with each other for money and for media. And like when you look at traditional money, there's multiple currencies. And then when you look at traditional media, we have our conventional news networks and whatnot. So I think if you believe that the internet is going to be competing in these things, which it already is, then there's not only going to be one currency, right? There's going to be multiple currencies.
Yes.
And there's going to be, new forms of media, which is, what's happening right now, even with this show, regardless of what scale they're at.
A great example of this view that there will be multiple cryptocurrencies and maybe they're generationally apart is look at Facebook as because I've said, I think of money is really like an abstract social network or like belief system. And so cryptocurrency, that's kind of what cryptocurrency is to me. And if you look at Facebook as a social platform, you might want to let's look at Facebook as being like kind of like analogous to Bitcoin. Now you might say, okay, like this is like the largest social network. It's been around for so long. I want to invest in it and have some money in it, right? Like it's at a certain stage of maturity. But what you've seen actually happen with Facebook over time that's kind of interesting is it's become like the boomer social media platform.
100%.
Like it's like my dad's on Facebook all the time and stuff.
Yeah.
And then so that's at a stage of maturity. Facebook's like, let's say Bitcoin. And then let's say like out of Silicon Valley, there was a new social media platform that was appealing to a younger generation. Let's call it TikTok. Would you not want to invest in both of those things, recognizing that there's a generational shift between where people are going to coalesce? Like, of course you would. And so the same way that there are different social media communities, platforms, what have you, that are appeal to different generations, I think you're going to see that dynamic play out with cryptocurrencies as well over time. It just so happens that we're only like 16 years into this. So we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg on that.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's like, as a young person, you don't want to log into Facebook and go on your feed and, just see like a bunch of boomers, as you said, and be consuming that kind of discourse when there's another new generational platform where there's going to be people who you feel like you relate with more. And then it's like, if we compare that to like Bitcoin and SPX, like if you look at Bitcoin right now, like the discourse is largely like institutional. Like how does that relate to like the younger generations that don't have a lot of wealth? versus like, obviously the ethos and the kind of culture that SPX promotes is relates to this kind of new generation so much more.
And these things coexist. Like like they can both exist and be valuable and have their purpose to different groups of people and at different stages of maturity, solving different types of problems.
There's a really good interview with Olaf Carlson, who's the founder of Polychain. I think he was the first employee at Coinbase and like demanded to be paid in Bitcoin. That I think is really good. I posted one part of the intro, which is probably 10 to 15 minutes. Highly recommend people go check it out. It's from the beginning of 2024. That I think is really good. That's talking about a similar concept to what you're discussing, Matt, which is, the concept of money as a social network. And I think he describes it really well and really simply, because Laura Shin, who's the Unchained reporter, asks him, now that Bitcoin is basically, this was like right before ETFs got launched, but had been approved. She was like, has your thesis changed at all? And he was like, I'm surprised how little it's changed, largely because, I think of money as like a protocol that is so embedded in your reality that it's almost like a fish swimming in water. It's like the fish doesn't know it's in water, right? It's just your reality. It's your life. And a lot of people don't zoom out to question, what does that mean? What does that look like? And is there a way that we can change that? And then also, where's the puck going, right? And what kind of consensus reality will be formed from like the external backdrop that we are faced with? And I totally agree. I think I really like the Facebook TikTok analogy, Tans. Like that's 100% what's going on here. And I think that Creatine said this the other day, and I think other people have said it too. But Bitcoin is becoming 500, right? And it doesn't mean that Bitcoin's a bad asset. It doesn't mean these things can't coexist. But it does mean that different demographics are going to gravitate toward, I think different risk profiles, different ideologies. And who knows? Maybe SPX will fall into that category one day. But our job is honestly to get it there.
Yeah, and I've said this in previous discussions. Like I view my job as to find the hardest asset at different stages of maturity. Like that's sort of my thesis, right? Is like I want to find the most hardcore asset that looks like what Bitcoin did at different levels on the time horizon. And because I think those are the ones that they become the vacuums. They become the ones that win. And part of why I got, I wouldn't just go out and be like, hey, I'm building, a new cryptocurrency and this is the vision, because who knows who shows up and if you can actually achieve it. Part of what drew me to SPX in the first place is I already saw that serving as the vacuum. I already saw very high quality people joining this movement. I saw a track record of people who, unlike many other coins that were claiming to try to do something similar, actually followed through more so on what they said they were going to do in terms of like holding, staying the course, being hardcore believers, etc. And so for me, it was like, okay, if there's an asset at this level of maturity that I think has the best chance of doing this, this is it.
I love that. Might be a good note to wrap up on, unless anybody has anything else to share.
Oh, my daughter is screaming so loud, I'm going to stay on mute right now. So, no, that was awesome.
My final thought is like, I think it's a meme from late last year or early this year from the SPX Telegram memes channel that I always just like. It kind of encapsulates like this entire conversation, how I think about it, which is that it's like the age-old meme of the fork in the road, and then there's like the kingdom with the thunder over it that's like the obvious scary path that's sad, and then the one that's bright with the sun over it. And on the right is 500, and that's the Doomerist side, and on the left is 6,900. And that even though it's like so simple, felt so powerful to me at the time, and still does, because it really feels like a collective of people who no longer will stand for a status quo that has betrayed them, or that they feel has betrayed them. And there's so much energy and inspiration and all these things that are anti-doomerist that exist in, trying to shape reality or influence reality. So, to me, that's really powerful. And that's why I think there's such a strong embodiment of kind of anti-price mentality here, because that behavior is so valuable to people in a world and in a time where there is no Schelling point for hope, that I just think there's no way but mass adoption. And I know that all of us and every other Aeon will fight for that reality.
And I think it's just a really exciting opportunity to try something that hasn't been done as well. Like, you look at the opportunity paths, and it's like, okay, you can go to school, you can be doctor number, 500 million, you can be lawyer number, 500 million, you can go build like another product business, like another supplement business, be supplement business number 250 million. But with what we're doing here, like, we have the chance to do something really novel with the first Memecoin. So I think it's just super exciting to be part of, and that's where you get the most asymmetric opportunities by trying things that haven't been done in a totally blue ocean.
Completely agree.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Drop a like and a comment across different platforms. That'll help us boost this up, and we'll see you the Thursday after next Thursday.
Love it. Persist forever.
Stop trading and believe in something.
Later, guys.
See ya.